It's time for Tycoons of Small Biz, spotlighting the true backbone of the American economy, the true tycoons of business in America, the owners, founders, and CEOs of small businesses. The show's hosts, Austin Peterson and Landon Mance, are registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors Corporation, a broker-dealer member SIPC, and registered investment advisor. The views expressed by your hosts, Austin and Landon, are not necessarily the views of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Let's lean in as Austin and Landon connect with this week's Tycoons.
Good afternoon, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. We are a program that is put together for small business by small business owners. Landon Mance and myself, Austin Peterson, host the show. Landon from Las Vegas, myself from Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we are excited to have on the show with us Todd Cravens, President and CEO of Galaxy Gaming. And this is actually a departure for us. This is the first time that we've had a public company on our show. We're typically a show that highlights small businesses that are privately held. But today we're going to highlight a company called Galaxy Gaming that is technically public, but they are a smaller company, a smaller public company. So we're excited to have Todd on the show and have him tell us a little bit about his story and the Galaxy Gaming story.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Todd, excited to have you here. So tell us a little bit about you personally first, if you don't mind. Tell us about your family, where you grew up, how you kind of came into the gaming space, and maybe a little bit of your background in gaming prior to Galaxy Gaming, as well as, kind of where you are today.
Sure. I grew up a bit in California and then a bit up in the Seattle, Washington area. And I've kind of always been in the out-of-home entertainment business, if you will. When I was 13, I bought an arcade game and installed it into a convenience store. And since I couldn't get a driver's license at that time, I used to run service and collections on my bicycle. And that thing kind of grew into a little bit of a larger route. And then by the time I was in college, I started opening up some arcades and things like that. So again, out of home entertainment, if you will. So I kind of grew up in that business. And my father and I, while I was in college, we had a sales and marketing company for coin-operated amusement industry. And so for smaller companies that didn't really have their own sales and marketing, we would handle that for them. And so there was a company called Incredible Technologies, and they reached out to us. We were kind of their last hope. A lot of people had passed on a game that they had. And so they sent us this little game in kind of a roll-up suitcase with a small little screen that popped up, and it was a golf game. And my father looked at this game. My father was ever the optimist, and he says, "We are going to sell 2,000 of these games." And I looked at him. I'm like, "It's a golf game. No one plays video golf games." And that game turned out to be Golden Tee Golf. And Golden Tee Golf went on to be the best-selling coin-operated amusement game since Miss Pac-Man. I think there were over 100,000 units of those sold. So that was how I spent a lot of my time in college, was selling that game and flying 100,000 miles a year while I was still in college. And then after that, I went and I worked for a guy by the name of Nolan Bushnell. And Nolan was the guy who invented Pong and started Atari and also Chuck E. Cheese. So I got to learn what it was like to work for a genius, a mad genius who had 30 ideas every day and then had 30 more the next day and then 30 more the next day. And then I went to work for our largest customer at that time. And I went to Chicago and opened up coin-operated amusement distributorship. And around that time, this is about 10, 11 years ago, the state of Illinois legalized basically slot machines to go into bars and taverns and truck stops. And so we got into that business, and that's what got me into the gaming industry, gambling industry, if you will. And one thing led to another, and I kind of got back over to Las Vegas here. And now I run a small company called Galaxy Gaming. And what we do is we come up with new and interesting games for tables. So table games rather than slot machines. Side bets that you would see on Blackjack games, or we'll create brand new games like High Card Flush. And what we do is we come up with the math and the marketing for that, and then we license that IP to casinos throughout the world. as well as online casinos throughout the world. And they pay us a monthly fee to use our stuff and offer those games to players at their tables. That's what we do.
It's interesting. So I feel like before we ever even get started, that Landon's going to be way more engaged than normal. Let's just call it that. Because what you may or may not know is that Landon was a professional poker player while he was in college. He actually dropped out of college and played professional poker for a year or two before going back to college and finishing up.
Yeah, couple years.
And where did you play?
Yeah, so I was living in Southern California. So I played at couple casinos out there. I played at Ocean's 11. I played at the Bike. I played at, Hawaiian Gardens.
Yeah.
And then once I got really serious about playing, I spent about half the month out in Vegas. And I'd stay on a friend's couch or in a hotel room for a week or two. Then I'd go back, and out in Vegas, I played all over the place. Bellagio, Venetian a lot, MGM, just kind of wherever the game, took me.
Well, so basically 2/3 of what we do. Essentially, what I like to say is that we basically, for us to create our games, we take math, we take psychology, which are the two things I'm sure you're very well aware of being a poker player. And then we mix in some marketing with it in regards to how we create our games. And if we do a good job of that and give the players an opportunity to win a little bit and an opportunity to win a lot at times, that's what kind of entices them to come here. So you're well on your way of understanding the kind of stuff that we do in regards to, trying to offer something to gamblers out there.
Yeah. Well, Austin definitely nailed it on the head. I am a little bit more excited today than I am maybe on future interviews, but for a couple of reasons. One, because of what Austin just mentioned, but the second reason, which I'd like to talk a little bit about today, we want to make sure we're talking about some of the things that you've mentioned in your intake form, but one of the things that is really unique is that we get this opportunity to interview you as the CEO of a public company.
Sure.
And one of the biggest issues in the market that we play in, which is the private business owner market, 5 to 50 million of revenue, call it, is that there is so little transparency, in the private capital markets. And so to get this perspective from you, running a relatively small company that is public, I definitely want to highlight that and focus in on that a little bit at some point in this conversation, because I think it's super interesting, but it also just lets us kind of draw some comparisons that we've never really been able to make on this show, or just generally kind of in the the clients that we serve. So I'm really interested and fascinated to kind of get your take and experience, running a pretty small public company.
Yeah, I mean, I would tell you, like everything, I think there's pluses and minuses. There are times when the queues are due and the audits are going on and things like that. I can tell you, I feel like there's a lot more minuses than there are pluses on there. And again, for a company our size, once we kind of get back, past COVID and stuff like that, just so your listeners know, we're north of $20 million a year. We have a pretty healthy EBITDA margin, so we're a nice little business. But to be a public company, it's not cheap, right? You're getting audit, you're taking care of your audits. You have a lot of filings to do. You have board members. There's board fees on that type of thing. But I think all things being equal, I think I would probably say it's been a good experience. I think it's been a good experience because I have a lot of, again, and also being a small company, I have a lot of interaction with our shareholders for a couple of reasons. Again, since we're a smaller company, if someone comes in and wants to take a pretty good size of your business, they don't have to put a ton of capital to work. But the other thing about us is that we're in the gaming industry. And the gaming industry is highly regulated. And so on a state-by-state basis, they'll do background checks based on if you're a key member, if you're an officer of the company, or if you're a shareholder of a certain level. It can be 5% threshold or 10% threshold. So I have a lot of these guys that I call 49ers. And those are the guys that are at the 4.9%. They like our business, but they surely don't want to go through the cost and the unpleasantness, if you will. If you're not used to being going through a gaming regulator issue, it's 10 years of credit card statements. It's 10 years of bank statements. We want to talk to neighbors. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. And, if you have an opportunity to invest in A and not have any issues, or B and have the full proctology exam, you may want to go with A. So the good news is, I get to spend a lot of time with them. I think the other thing is that as we have looked at some M&A stuff and we closed on a company last year, we were able to use our stock as a currency at some level, which is something you can do a little bit more readily available with a public company than you can with a private company. And so I think that allowed us to go out there and purchase the company we bought, PGP, at the rate that we wanted to buy it at, and with the two different currencies, a little bit of cash and a little bit of stock to do those things. And then I think that, on the other side of it is that it does give us, I think, a little bit more exposure to people. Being a public company, you're in front of everyone every quarter with something. If you have to, people know what you're doing, and if you have a good story to tell, every quarter they see your numbers on there. So if your story is good, it gains interest, and people are a little bit more interested on there. Where that's something you don't necessarily get on the private side of things, unless you've got a really good PR machine or a great marketing team to do that. On the negative side of things, like I said, it's the cost, and it's probably, an additional person and a half in a small company like ours, where we've got 40 to 45 people that are really just kind of focused in on, making sure that all your filings are right. And we spend a little bit too much more money on that than I think we ought to as a smaller company on those things, just as a cost. But the one other thing it does do is that it forces you to have a board, right? Not every private company has to have a board. And we're really lucky. This is a company we've gone through, a whole bunch of fun stuff in regards to changing out a founder and going through a pandemic and things like that. And we definitely couldn't have done it alone. And we did it with a really, really good board. And, we have board members that one was the head of the Nevada Gaming Control Board here, and carries a lot of weight. He's on a board of another gaming company. We have another board member who used to be CEO of a second largest gaming company in the world in Scientific Games. So, we've been able, for whatever reason, to attract some good talent around us. And that talent is, it's really helped me personally in regards to bouncing ideas off of. And they slap me upside the head when they think I'm doing something not too bright. And I think it's just helped the company in general. So, on balance, I think it forces you to do some things that you're not required to do as a private company. So it forces us to really think about our processes. It really, going through the audit, and if you change an auditor, they really look at things in a different way. And I think the force of having a board to really help you think about not just the day-to-day stuff, but okay, what's the 5-year plan, and pushing you on things and asking you to think about different things. The fact that those things are required and formalized, like I said, I think on balance, I think is very, very helpful for us.
Yeah, so I've got two things to say to that, I guess. First is a comment, and then the second would be a question, I suppose. The first thing that I would say is, Landon and I, and what we do day to day in doing comprehensive financial planning for business owners specifically. And like I said at the beginning of the program, it's typically, privately held businesses, is that the one positive, I would think, and really the biggest negative that Landon and I deal with when we're trying to get a business ready to sell, is that they don't have the professional stuff that you just talked about, right? They don't have a board. They don't have their financials in order. They don't have, everything kind of put together to easily say, here's our information, here's how we operate, and here's what we're worth. Do you want to buy the company or not? That's a huge benefit on the public side, right? Because you're forced to do that every single quarter.
Yeah. And look, we're for sale every day, right? Because, our shares are publicly traded, and people can tell you what they think we are worth by the minute of a trading day on there. But to your point, I've been in private businesses and family business as well. So I know exactly what you're talking about. But yeah, I think it's the rigor, and I think it's the processes and things like that we have in place, that because it's a requirement, you do it, right? If things aren't a requirement, a lot of times you don't do it, right? It's pretty rare where a private company would do all of these things unless they're of some substantial scale and probably have an eye to doing something, or the private equity or whatever it is, that type of thing. But to your point, I think that's exactly right. We are kind of ready, set. Here are the books. Here are the knuckleheads that are running this company. Keep them if you want. Otherwise, kick them out the door and do your thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and then I guess the follow-up question to that, you talked about the regulation, which as a public company, there's all kinds of regulations that you have to deal with. But then on top of that, you've got the regulations of being a gaming company, which really, kind of makes it worse, so to speak. But the question that I would have then is, what about institutional investors? How are they treated in terms of you talked about the background checks. If you want to own more than 5% of your company, they got to go through the background checks. But how does that transfer to an institutional investor?
Like almost every question about regulatory items, I wish there was a one answer, right? Every state has a little bit different look at things. So some states make accommodations for an institutional investor. And some situations, if you're over 5%, they want to start digging in deeper on things. And so that has been, I would tell you, one of the issues, not just in our company, but in the industry in general, where it has kind of scared off some of the institutional guys. Now, when you get to companies that are much bigger than ours, going in and taking a 5% chunk of the business is a different amount of commas than if you were to do that in our business. But again, every state looks at it a little bit differently. We have some states that they want to do background investigations of anybody at 1%. Some states will say, okay, our threshold is 5%, but we retain the right that if we want to check someone out, we're going to check them out if they own 5 shares or 10 shares. So there's really not a one size fits all. I think where a lot of people, like I said, have been kind of coming in there and comfortable are these guys that are kind of right under that 4.9% and that type of thing. But by and large, not a lot of huge institutional folks. Obviously, we're a micro cap. We are getting a lot more interest from these micro cap funds. So we are seeing there's more micro cap funds out there and micro cap investors than I ever knew there were. I call them the micro cap mafia affectionately because all these guys know each other and they've introduced me to this guy and to that guy. But I'm seeing more funds out there in the micro cap world. And those are the guys I think that are dipping their toes in with companies like ours that I see. Not as much as, larger mutual funds, things like that.
So the industry as a whole, this iGaming industry that you're a part of, I think it's fairly clear that it's going to grow tremendously over the next 10, 15, 20 years. And so I guess that will be interesting to watch to see specifically how that's handled in terms of institutional investors and getting to the next level, right? To small cap, to mid cap, to, hopefully eventually large cap. That's an interesting phenomenon that you're going to have to deal with, I guess, from a regulation standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I think iGaming is a place where a lot of people have a lot of interest right now. It comes, I would say, a little bit on the back of all of the explosion of sports betting here in the States. But iGaming's been around for a while. So iGaming has been, it's a fairly mature industry in the UK and the EU. And we bought an iGaming company last year called Progressive Game Partners. And they had been a distributor of our content as well as other people's content, built mostly over in the UK and the EU. And so iGaming is right now, for those of you who don't know, basically it's the ability to go online, and in certain states that allow it, you can play table games or slot machines as you would at a physical casino, either through an RNG, which is kind of a graphical representation of things, or kind of like what we have here, a live dealer who would, pull cards and deal cards with someone with a camera in front of you. So right now you have the state of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, recently Michigan, and West Virginia that currently offer this. You, at the same time, you have over 20, almost 25 states, I think, right now that offer legalized sports betting. And so one of the things that you'll see if you kind of look at what the DraftKings and the FanDuels and the BetMGMs of the world are talking about is that they all believe that 4 or 5 years from now, they will be making more money from iGaming than they will from sports betting. A couple reasons for that. I think it appeals to more people. In the sports betting world, you're trying to find that 10% vig, if you will, half people on one side or the other. And there are different types of percentages when you're playing slot machines or you're playing table games out there. So what we've seen overall is that the EU and the UK continue to grow. When everything has been closed over there, obviously the online numbers were very good. And when casinos were closed here in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, their numbers grew. When I think about iGaming, I don't think of it as an if or with land-based casinos. We think of it as a complement to it. And one of the things that we've learned, we have a pretty substantial land-based business as well as iGaming business in the UK. And again, as I mentioned, this is a place where it's a pretty mature market over there. And they think of it differently. They want to make sure that regardless of how their customers want to consume content, if it's on green felt or if it's on phone or what have you, they want to make sure that same content is there and available for their customers. And so that means that they want to have 21 plus 3 on the phone and they want to have 21 plus 3 on the felts. That's one of our Blackjack side bets. And we are seeing similar things here in the state. Pennsylvania, we have product in the land-based casinos there. And we offer 21 plus 3 and Lucky Ladies and Bonus Craps online. They play those games. So customers are really looking for those titles that they're comfortable with. So I think what you're going to see with iGaming is right now, only about 9% of the U.S. population has access to it based on states that are legalized right now. Connecticut is in the process of legalizing it. But I think over the next 4 to 5 years, it's going to be very, very similar to sports betting. Our thesis statement is to say, well, it's okay for you to go online and bet on the Red Sox with your shirt on there, but that you can't bet on the next hand of blackjack. It's just a very difficult argument. And then I think you can also look at the tax base. In the first month where Michigan went live, they went live with sports betting and iGaming at the same time. You had $114,000 worth of tax revenue off sports betting and over $4 million in tax revenue off iGaming. And so I think what you're going to see there, especially as states are looking for new and interesting ways to raise revenue, if they already have sports betting and they have the opportunity to tax a little bit more on the iGaming, if you have physical land casinos, if you have sports betting, and you can now offer iGaming at a reasonable tax rate, I think you're probably going to do that. And I think most people feel that way as well. So back to your original question, that's the type of stuff that's bringing in, I think, larger investors. DraftKings went public through a SPAC, and obviously a lot more institutional guys doing those types of things. But you'll end up seeing 4 or 5 major operators out there offering these products. And those will be pretty major companies, I think, with institutional investors.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting deal. I mean, we see it quite a bit. I live in Arizona, like I said at the beginning of the show, and we just legalized marijuana, non-medicinal marijuana in Arizona. We do have land-based casinos here. Sports betting is legal, right? So I don't see any reason why it doesn't. And the other part you kind of mentioned is tax revenue. The whole reason all of these things are being legalized in these states is tax revenue.
Exactly right.
Yeah, it's a way to generate tax revenue without having to actually tax the population, whether it's property taxes, sales tax, income tax. It's a way to generate additional revenue.
That's right.
Yeah.
Obviously, we live here in Las Vegas, and we love the fact that tourists come in here and smoke some dope and play some craps. So we don't have any state income tax, right? So again, that's kind of the usage tax or the sin tax or whatever you want to call it. I'm happy for those people to do that, just so we continue to send in $0 checks to the state of Nevada.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't blame you. And, smoking dope and playing craps is like every Friday night at Landon's house.
Well, yeah. I mean, if a Friday night at Landon's house consists of that, man, I'd like to be invited to that party sometime because we're in bed by about 9:30 and the house is quiet at 8. So I don't know, but Todd, to your point on this smoking dope and gambling kick here, I did just see something come through on the Review Journal saying that we just gave the thumbs up for cannabis lounges or something like that. So I'm assuming that means now that people can sit in a lounge and smoke a blunt, maybe play on a slot machine.
Well, those won't be, from what I understand, I don't think those are going to be allowed in any casino properties, right? So they are going to kind of, that's the Chinese wall that they have there, that those are not going to be, within those walls. It's kind of like the gentlemen's clubs aren't in casinos, and I think these lounges won't be in there as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Interesting. Are they going to be able to gamble in those lounges? Do you know?
I don't know if they were going to do something like that. I think what they might end up doing would be kind of like the slot routes, or maybe you have the video poker games in there potentially, but I don't think they are going to be full licensed casinos with slot machines and table games, as I understand it right now.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I've got a question for you, and maybe you know the answer to this, and maybe you do not. I heard a statistic, this was many years ago, around sports betting.
Okay.
And if I recall correctly, it was something like less than 5% of sports bettors actually make money, or I know it was something to the extent where I was just like scratching my head going, and why do people ever bet sports? So I don't know if you can speak to that, but yeah, I heard something like that.
I don't know what it is on the specific percentage of it. What I can tell you is that it depends on what your timeline is, right? If you bet, if my timeline was a week and I catch a heater, I'm pretty good. But I think if you take someone over a period of time, and you're betting 110 to make 10, and it's a flip of a coin over a period of time, the math is the math. And I think that's, one of the things, as I mentioned earlier on, is that we blend math and we blend marketing and we blend psychology together. But at the end of the day, this is math. And so, when people, if you see a slot machine, right, and it says, hey, it's a 95% payout, okay, well, that means, okay, if I put in $100, at the end of that $100, I should expect to have 95. And then if I play off that 95, I should expect to have 95% of that, right? And again, obviously there's ups and downs in those types of random number generator type games, or we're just pulling hands and things ebb and flow. But, when you start to have hundreds of thousands of bets over a period of time, you have, this type of deal going on. But once you start having a lot of it, it starts to smooth out pretty well. And you guys sit there, and I'm sure you guys run your Monte Carlo scenarios and things like that. And depending on if you have a short timeline or a longer timeline, when you're sitting down with your people, and obviously things get a little bit smoother, and time and the math and the compounding works for them. It's not different in what we do, right? You guys are looking to compound this way, and we look at a return to player that kind of goes a little bit this way while still offering an entertainment value, right? Are you willing to pay 5% for a chance to win more, but have a good time, right? It's not any different than going to a movie for $15. And that's the healthy way to gamble, right? To say, hey, this is going to be entertainment. I'm going to have a good time with it. But just like your industry, math and time is our friend.
Right. Yeah. Earlier, you talked about the potential for some explosive growth in your industry. So talk to us for a minute, Todd, and how does Galaxy fit into this future growth in your industry?
Yeah, so I think that the iGaming growth is really where a lot of people are focusing in on. And obviously, it's one of the reasons we made the decision to purchase the company we did last year. And I think one of the reasons is because it scales just so well, right? So if someone goes out and they make our game in that RNG style, and that's the graphical representation, they make that game once. And they can have as many people playing on that game at any time as they want. And then in the live dealer type deal, that also scales very well into games like roulette or games like Baccarat, where there's no in-game decision. So you can literally have 10,000 concurrent players on a game online, where obviously because of physical constraints like this table here, you get around 7 people around the table. So I think what people get really excited about is, number one, people don't have to make a specific trip. And I think the scalability is pretty amazing on this. So why we think we're in a pretty good spot for it is that, we do pretty well in the table game space. And as things open up in North America, Blackjack is the number one game. Well, we own 5 of the top 7 side bets for Blackjack in the world right now. So as, a new state opens like Connecticut, our product is going to go and find its fair share. And our players already know that because we have that product into the physical casinos in these next states already. So we have a built-in player base that knows our product already. The online operators have already developed our product. So there's no real added cost to bring our product to the next state and to the next state and to the next state. So, for us, we want to make sure that we continue to build a big moat around the Blackjack side of the business, and that we also have an eye on how do we make these really interesting games where we can have a lot of concurrent players on here. And then I think long term, and I think that's kind of like step one. Then I think the next thing that's out there is that what's interesting about the iGaming side of things is that, in our opinion, it doesn't have to be a table. What you see right now is people are starting to put out, a lot more entertainment value, like a game show style deal where they spin a wheel and someone's got a microphone and they're having a good time, and the set design is fantastic because, again, going back to the fact that it's entertainment, but it doesn't have to have the physical constraints that you typically see in a physical casino. And so I think there's going to be that next level of entertainment value. And then I think thirdly, what we're seeing is, as I mentioned, with the sports betting guys and the DFS guys, we're believers that at least in the States, you're going to see 4 or 5 of the major operators, the DraftKings, the FanDuels, the BetMGMs, those kind of guys. And I liken them to the streaming services that you see now, Disney and Netflix and Hulu and things like that. So right now, everybody's got kind of mostly the same stuff. But eventually, in order to keep people within your little ecosystem, you're going to start to have to create specific and exclusive content, right? HBO, Game of Thrones, Netflix, House of Cards, that type of thing. So I think that one of the things that you're going to see is that you're going to see reasons for these guys to go in there and do deals or create content studios. You're starting to see some of these guys do that now to say, we're going to make our own content. And so I could see us turning into a little bit more of a company that are like showrunners. We've got this great game. You guys want this exclusively? We talk to the other guys, that type of deal. And so I think that if you go back to the sports side of their business, right? If I'm looking for a game that I want to play, I'm shopping a line, right? He can give me 3 points on this game, but over here I can get 4. So my ability or to stay in their ecosystem is pretty weak versus, can I go find that game I really love to play, but that's the only place I can get it? That's what's going to keep me there. And so I think that that's kind of maybe what we start to think about as far as the evolution of what we're going to see for content in the iGaming space.
So to sum it all up, you guys, your focus is Blackjack. That's where you guys think that you shine today, or know that you shine today, and you believe that you're going to be the number one, or that's what you're shooting for, is being the number one provider of Blackjack side bets throughout the world.
Yeah. mean, today we are. It's not the only products that we carry on there, but we know that that's the calling card. And right now, if you're opening up something in America, you definitely want to make sure you've got Blackjack covered, right? So we have products that covers the poker derivatives and the roulettes and those other types of things. But we want to make sure we plant our flag there, build the moat, and then start to build some of the other content out for these guys.
So what's the long-term play you think for Galaxy Gaming, right? I mean, FanDuel and DraftKings have done a tremendous job from a marketing standpoint. Everybody knows those names. Even if you've never placed a sports bet, everybody knows those names, right? So what's the long-term marketing plan and or, long-term growth and acquisition plan for Galaxy Gaming?
Yeah, so I'd say, on the marketing plan, people don't need to necessarily know Galaxy Gaming, but they really do need to know about 21+3, and they do need to know about Lucky Lady. So when I think about our branding, it's one of those things that we're going to do more of down the road, right? We really want to build into these brands for our customers, and we want to get to the point where, they ask for them by name. I mean, we are on pace this year where we'll do over 1 billion bets on our product online, with a beat. So it's a lot. So we know that people like it, but we want to reinforce those brands as much as possible. So that's number one. Number two, there's definitely as you guys know, there's a lot of money in the market right now. There's a lot of consolidation that's happening in and around our space on things. We've been independent for 21, almost 22 years right now. And I think you always, as a small business owner or a small business president, you always have to run your business like you're going to run it forever, right? You can't assume that there's going to be a purchase of your company or what have you, regardless of what's going on in and around you. So, as we mentioned earlier, we've gone through some stuff. And, last year, after we'd gone through some items with the founder, the pandemic hits, and, last March, we put out a press release saying we're suspending billing to all of our physical customers. Luckily, we still had the iGaming, and we've come out of that. And last year, we did the PPP loan. We did a Main Street loan program. I mean, we were hitting on all sorts of, we're getting all those Bernie bucks anywhere we could, right? And we weathered the storm on there. And so we've gone through, I would say, over the last 3 years, some interesting times and getting licensed in more places. And I really feel like we're at a place right now where we can kind of take that deep breath, and we're now planning for, the next 5 years and 7 years. We're doing these types of internal plans on things. So as I mentioned, we just opened up some new jurisdictions. So what are we going to do? We're going to go out there. We're going to go get our rightful place in the Californias in the world, the Mississippis and Missouris, and places that we couldn't really do business in before. So we still have a lot of space there. Outside of the UK, the company really hasn't done much internationally. We have some opportunities in Europe and South Africa. We know over the next 5 years, think about how do we get into the Asian and South American markets. And then we need to really, really focus on great product, right? What we do today, if we're still doing the same thing 5 years from now, that's going to be a problem. So we'll be expanding our product base in regards to what we offer. I think that it'll still have a lot of ties to the table side of things, but you may play our games on a tablet, or you may play our games on electronic gaming terminals. You'll definitely be playing them with your iPad or on your phone while the honey bunny is watching a rom-com on Netflix, and you're playing our games that way and gaming a little bit. So, we're thinking of basically at the end of the day, we want our content to get out there regardless of how people want to consume them or where they want to consume them. And now we just have more opportunities for us to get out there to do it. So, as I said before, look, we're a publicly traded company, so we're for sale every day on a share-by-share basis. But we have to think about and plan and run the company as we'll stay independent for the next 22 years.
Yeah, I think that's a fair way to look at it, right? I mean, because you do have to balance that, right? And we've said, I don't know how many, probably hundreds of times on this program, Stephen Covey's famous line, begin with the end in mind. And you have to do that from a planning standpoint, but at the same time, you're a public company. You can't plan on somebody coming in and, Berkshire Hathaway coming in and buying the whole company and delisting you guys and taking you private. I mean, you can't count on that. You have to work in what you've got today and build a plan, you know?
Yep. And that's what we're doing. And like I said, we've got after getting through the last year, and the team did a wonderful job of staying focused and working through and creating product during the downtime and doing all that type of stuff that, we took a little bit of advantage, but, we're at a point now we had kind of around here, we had this mantra over the last year of survive and thrive. And, we do something around here called the State of the Galaxy, and we do it every day that we release earnings. And we basically sit down in the team and saying, here's what we did last quarter, and here's what we're going to do next quarter. And, as I sat them down at the last State of the Galaxy, I said, I am letting everybody know we have survived, right? And so now it's the thrive part, and that's kind of the fun stuff, right? Even though I would tell everyone that the last year was probably, I would say I got more as a manager out of the last year than I have at any other time in my career. Tough times, you have to do tough things, and you ask a lot of people, and our people responded really well. So in a very weird way, I kind of enjoyed last year as I look back on it now in regards to doing the difficult things with our team here. But now it's time to do the fun stuff, right? We're getting back to the numbers that we did before with a better cost structure. And we have more opportunities with new states opening up, and the iGaming is kind of a fun thing to do. So as much as I learned from the last year, I think I'm going to enjoy the next couple of years, hopefully a little bit more.
Gives you a lot of confidence moving forward, right? When you go through a year like you did last year, to know that you were able to make it through relatively unscathed now with a better structure moving forward, I would assume that gives you and your team a lot of confidence looking into the future.
It does. Yeah. I mean, the old saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I think that's one of those things. And we really, the core of the people that have been here for a while and were with us over the last year, I mean, they're just reinvigorated, and, they're very, very focused. They lived through that. Everyone took a little bit of haircut, obviously, around bonus time and things like that. And not one person ever complained about it. They got it. They understood it. And now we're kind of set for go. So I'm very, very lucky to be surrounded by a team like that, said, okay, whatever we got to do. And now I think they'll be rewarded for it as we go forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, I wanted just to get some clarification on something from you. I should have asked this earlier when you had mentioned it and we're talking about it a bit, but I didn't want to interrupt you. You keep referring to the 21 plus 3, and then I think the plus 3 is the side bet part of it, I believe. So for some people, they probably don't really know what that is or what that means. So can you just talk about what are the side bets of Blackjack and speak to that for a moment, if you would?
Yeah. So, Blackjack, the name of the side bet's called 21 plus 3. And so basically what side bets are is there are games that are already in the public domain, games like craps, games like Blackjack, and things like that. So what we do, we either will make a whole new game from scratch, like a game like High Card Flush, and it's 100% proprietary. We make it from the ground up, and you go up there and that's the game. Or we'll offer side bets and progressive meters that'll go up here on the side, and kind of like a tote board will go up for each incremental bet. But basically a side bet is an opportunity to say, let's say if I put $20 down on a blackjack hand, and I can put $5 down on the side bet. So it's an additional bet there. There's a different game. So in some situations, it could be matched up cards, or it could be 3 sevens, or it could be a 6, 7, 8 in regards to what's dealt with me. And based on whatever it says here on the pay table, that would be what I would get paid out on the side bet. And that has nothing to do with the base game of blackjack. And so why do people like side bets? So players like side bets because by and large, they're looking for a little bit more volatility into their gaming. And they're also looking for something to say, okay, I can put $5 down and potentially win 50 to 1 or 25 to 1 on. They like those odds versus something on blackjack, which is, as you know, is basically a 1-to-1 or, a 3-to-2 or 6-to-5, depending on where you are on the strip for a payout for blackjack. And so, and then why do gaming operators like it? Because there is a better house edge on the side bets. Very little house edge in regards to straight blackjack for them. So what they're looking for is, okay, players like to play something, they get a little up and down on things, they get a nice little win, but over a period of time, again, going back to what we talked about, time and money, over a period of time, those side bets are going to actually have a better house edge for them than the base game of blackjack itself. So that's what a side bet does. And we actually offer that for even a game like craps. And you would think that there are enough places to bet on a craps table. I guess not. We have a game called Bonus Craps that is very, very popular. It's the #1 craps game in the world, and people bet that as well. So it's just one of those things, and you see this in slot machines all over where people are looking for a little bit more volatility. And I talk about it as being kind of that elastic bet, right? If I can put $1 down and potentially win 100, that's interesting to people versus I put $5 down on a base game and maybe I'll win $5, not as interesting. And so that's one, again, getting back to kind of the psychology that we talked about and the marketing around it is how can we create interesting side bets where feel there's like a bigger win. And when we get back to the psychology, a lot of the stuff of what we do is that, you have a pay table of pay out 1-to-1 and 3-to-1, and then the big times are up to 100-to-1. A lot of times what we'll do is we take some of the meat out of the middle and we'll push some of it down to the bottom. Right? Because it's important to make sure that you're pushing back 1 or 2 chips to the player on a pretty regular basis, right? So again, that kind of comes back to the psychology of what we do with as we create these games.
Interesting. Well, I would assume that piques the interest when it's more favorable for the house to take on something like that. That's probably something they are interested in, huh?
It is. And especially, like I said, on a game where they have such a slight house edge, they're looking for anything they can to raise that up a little bit.
Well, hey, Austin, I know you've got a question or comment here, so I want you to jump in, but I want to just say something out loud here so I don't forget. After we kind of wrap up here in the next few minutes around talking about Galaxy, I want you to just talk for a couple minutes, Todd, about what it's been like for you transitioning from, a lifelong entrepreneur to being a CEO of a corporation, albeit, small and I think relatively nimble. But I want to get your thoughts on that. But let me pass it back to Austin because I think he's got a follow-up question in regards to what we're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great conversation to have, and I want to have that conversation. I just thought it was a good opportunity to have you reiterate the way that Galaxy Gaming makes its money in that situation, right? Because obviously the house makes more with the side bets, like you said. That's interesting to them. I believe at the beginning you said that it's basically a subscription service that those casinos are paying you, but what about the purely online games? So I guess maybe just delineate the two real quick, and then we'll get to Landon's question.
Yeah, so essentially, most of our terrestrial business is on a monthly fee, if you will, by and large. Most of it is that way. So we would have a fee for the felt, and in many situations, if we have the hardware, we're running the progressive and things like that, there would be a fee for that. The online business kind of grew up differently, right, with a different model. And that model was basically that we participate in a percentage of the net win on our games, which that means is that you have all the money that's bet just on our side bet. So not on the base game in that particular, just our side bet. And so all the bets, all the payouts, and then we take a percentage of that net win, if you will. So obviously, that's important to us. So as our customers grow with our product, we grow with them. And so what's interesting about that is that, again, depending on, the situation, you may have some guys that had a really good month, but they had a lower hold, or just because of the luck of the draw. Or you may have a great month because the hold was a little bit higher. But again, over time, it all evens out. So we have a little bit more volatility in regards to that portion of our business, in regards to what goes up or down and things like that. But I think over time, it smooths out. And then once you start to really have the amount of bets that I mentioned earlier, that really starts to smooth things out, and you have a pretty good understanding of math. And what's different is, different places have different bet values. They have different pay tables. So we work with them to try and help find the right thing for them and their players on there. But again, that part of our business is a percentage of the net win. So if the statistics come out and iGaming's up, that's usually a pretty good month for us.
Yeah. So Landon, I don't know if you want to ask it again, or if Todd's really just that good and remembers exactly what you wanted to know.
I do remember it.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure he does. Yeah.
I have, I would tell you, I guess I'm a recovering entrepreneur, if you will. One of the things that we talked about as we started this was that, we're still a relatively small company. And because of that, you get to do a lot of different things. I get to do something like this today. I have an interview with a potential, new candidate who's coming on board. Yesterday, I had some bankers in the office, and tomorrow I've got some iGaming developers that are going to be here. So, I'm not one for titles. I actually could care less of what my title is or what have you. And I think if you're an entrepreneur, it's kind of in your blood. I would tell you, if there's one thing that's been most difficult is that, as I mentioned, for me now, after kind of the year that we had last year, when we have a situation like last year and all your customers go dark, you're involved in everything, right? You need to make sure that you got a plan. You got to make sure that you got cash in the bank. If there's a PPP loan, you want to make sure that you got it. You're having constant conversations with folks. And I would tell you that, one of the things that we did during the pandemic, we were early. We sent everybody home probably a week or so ahead of time. And everyone said, we thought we were crazy. But during that time that we were all apart, I sent an email out to the team every single day. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're working on. Here's what we've got to go. In those early days, no one really knew what this thing was going to be. And, we had, people that were very concerned, and we had people all over the map on stuff. And we felt that it was important to make sure that we kept everyone focused on something else, right? Let's work on this project. Let's get this done, and keep their minds away from just worrying about the end of the world and doing that type of stuff. And so it was literally every day those emails go out. Before then and since then, I always send an email out to the team on, here's the 3 things that we're working on this week, what have you. But I would tell you, if there's, it's hard for me to pull away as an entrepreneur. I'm interested. I'm curious about things. I'm curious about people. I'm curious about new products. And so for me, if there's a problem, it's kind of letting go of that stuff. I'm at a point right now, as I mentioned, where we're really spending the time thinking about what the next 5 years are. And so for me, I have to think about working on the business rather than working in the business. Last year when it's all hands on deck, I was nothing but in the business, right? I wanted to make sure we got next month. Yeah, we're good for next month. Get through that month, we're good for that. Yeah, we're good for that month. And now, like I said, it's the deep breath and it's working on the business. And so the biggest thing I would say is putting great people into place, which we have here. Adding great people. Like I said, I got to talk to some folks in the next couple of days of how do we continue to, I think, bulletproof this place. I want to make sure that if I get hit by a bus on my way to Chipotle, that this place doesn't burn down to the ground. And so it's really the transition to working on the business rather than working in the business, and then trusting people on that type of thing. And so for me, I would say that's the biggest transition. I don't think that if you were a janitor after 2nd grade like I was in the summer, and then doing all this other stuff, and then starting a home enhancement company in junior high, like it's in your blood. It's in your blood. And for me, I was just having lunch with someone, and we were walking back from lunch. And I said, I don't know if I do really well in a big old company, right? So a company like this size allows me to really exercise that entrepreneurial skill set, whatever that skill may be. that's the transition, is making sure that you're working on the business and you got really, really good people to go and execute it.
Interesting. I love it. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, Todd, we are essentially out of time. We're just a couple minutes out from the top of the hour.
It's interesting to me, the whole conversation that you just had where you explained, the difference and what you have to do now. And the funny thing is, you're doing that because of the position that you're in, and it's somebody else's company, and you're the one who has the keys to the kingdom, so to speak. But the reality is, we're constantly trying to work with entrepreneurs and business owners of privately held businesses to do exactly what you just described.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing for entrepreneurs to do, right? I mean, you described I'm going to forget who it was that you worked for that had the 30 different ideas every day. That's a classic entrepreneur, right? But not an executive.
Right.
And you've got to figure that balance, whether it's a public company or a private company.
That's absolutely right. And there are different skill sets, right? And I'm sure that I trip up at times in doing that, just because, it's easy for me to pick up the phone and call the guy that I've known for 15, 20 years and say, are you out of your mind, or do something like this, versus kind of pushing out saying, you guys need to go solve this internally, and have them kind of get their reps in place and do that type of stuff. So, it's as much development of your team as I think as anything. But to the point, like you're saying, is that I think it's getting those right people in the door and trusting your team on there. And, we've gotten to a place right now where we've got a really, really nice core of people. And, as you guys, talk with your clients, and I just, everyone talks about, oh, it's people, it's this and that. It's always the people, right? It's always the people. There's going to always be, I think, ideas that come and go. But, I have someone that's working here now, and she was with me for 5 years at the last place. And, we're at a point right now where I can look across the room and she knows exactly what I'm thinking. I know exactly what she's thinking, and she executes, right? And so, I always think of it this way: what areas of the business do I not really worry about? Because I know I got someone there that's got it covered, right? And I can kind of go down the list of like, okay, I got that covered. That's covered right there. Oh, we need to put a little bit of time. It's like the Chinese acrobat spinning the plates, right? Which plate is wobbling right now that needs your attention right there? And there's certain places where the plates are spinning pretty well most of the time. And so from that's kind of, visually how I think about it. And as you can get just more of those plates spinning without you having to touch it, then you can just go and take more naps. And that's really what I'm looking for. So it's just taking really, going over to his house, shooting craps and doing whatever he does on a Friday night. That's really what I'm aiming for. That's really, so.
It's funny because that truly is the only way to scale a business. Is you have to be comfortable delegating. You have to have the right people in the right seats and feel comfortable that they will do what you need them to do. If you can't do that, you'll never truly scale.
Yeah, and I would say the one other thing about that is also, I think you have to have the courage to put in better people than yourself, right? I still have, regular one-on-ones with all my folks at least every other week. And there's definitely people doing jobs a whole lot better than I did in that position. And we're very lucky here. We have a CFO by the name of Harry Haggerty. Harry was the CEO of Caesars, or CFO of Caesars rather, and Harry's a whole lot smarter than I am. And we just, we make a really good team on there. And so I think that, if you're running a little public company or a big public company or a small one, it's not only just putting people in there, but, if you can find people better than you, absolutely do it and don't be afraid, right? And I think that just comes back to you in spades. Because most of the people here are much smarter than I am. I can tell you that for a fact. At least, and they work a lot harder than I do. I'm putting in a full 15, 20 hours a week. They're putting in at least 25, I think. So.
Well, that's good to hear. Landon and I are partners because I was comfortable enough partnering with somebody that was better looking than me.
There you go. What do you want? You want to be better looking or you want to be smarter? It's up to you. You can have one.
You can draw your own conclusions there.
You can have one.
Well, Todd, I'm going to go on the record. Looking at your stock right now on the Apple, app. Looks like you guys have a market cap 76.38 million. That's what it's telling me as of today, which is June 8th, 2021. So it sounds like you've got an elaborate, concrete plan ahead of you for Galaxy. So we'd love to, reconnect with you in 6 to 12 months and have you back on and get an update on your undoubted success that you've got coming up. So on behalf of both of us, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all this with us. Really, really interesting conversation. And if anybody wants to look you up and pick your brain on something or have a conversation with you, how do they track you down?
Yeah, I think we have contact information on galaxygaming.com, and we're pretty responsive. So just reach out to us there, and we're happy to talk to all comers.
All right. Very cool, Todd. Well, thanks again for coming on, and we look forward to connecting with you again sometime soon.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, proudly hosted by Austin Peterson and Landon Mance. Austin and Landon are comprehensive financial planning professionals specializing in financial, estate, and succession planning for small business owners. Austin and Landon have offices in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and represent clients in 14 states throughout the country. Join Austin, Landon, and the featured Tycoons live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. right here on Business RadioX and your favorite